During my most formative adolescent years, my home situation left me as a prime candidate to fall in with the wrong crowd and head down a really self-destructive path. Instead, I lucked into finding a structured program and a supportive community that lined up with my childhood dream, and by extension, stumbling onto a path that would forever convince me of how identity-based change can transform anyone's life for the better. Welcome to Falling to Systems, a channel dedicated to the idea that with time and consistency, we're all capable of transforming into who we admire today. As a young child, I had always been fascinated by airplanes. While most kids were naturally drawn to action figures or books, I was always deeply interested in aircraft and the thought of one day flying. I loved the movie Top Gun, but I couldn't care less about the story. I only cared about the dogfight scenes where Maverick hunted down the fake Russians in training. I grew up in a small suburb north of San Francisco, and I went to public school. I played soccer throughout elementary school and started playing the recorder in the 4th grade. Pretty typical upbringing. During elementary school, I was always drawn to order and structure though, and if I wasn't building model airplanes, I was always challenging myself with origami. I liked having a set of instructions to follow. Now, apart from my chosen interests as a child, I didn't really stand out in any particular way. My grades were average at best, and I was a middle of the pack soccer player. My parents are both immigrants from Ecuador, so they were constantly working, and I was largely raised by my grandmother in those early years. I was always embarrassed when I had friends come over because I knew my house smelled funny, from the food that my grandma would lovingly prepare every day. By the 6th grade, I had picked up the saxophone and discovered that I actually had a knack for it. Before long, I was the lead alto sax in a pretty competitive jazz band, and I won awards and was given all the best solo spots. And by the 8th grade, I was actually beginning to think that I could make a run at being a musician. And this little ray of sunshine was about the only good thing going on at the time because my family life was falling to pieces. A cruel mix of infidelity, alcoholism, and bankruptcy led my parents to divorce. My dad moved out and my mom was just beginning to fall victim to a decades-long struggle with alcoholism. My house devolved into squalor, and my aunt and my uncle eventually had to move in with us and raise my sister and me alongside their 2 kids, just to keep some stability in our lives. Shout out to them actually, since they actually had a huge impact on making sure that I ended up being raised right. Now, band balanced the scales, and I was still watching reruns of Wings, the airplane show, not the sitcom, as a way of kind of escaping to a place that made me happy. Then, everything changed one day during the 8th grade when my class was called into an assembly. A small group of cadets from the local junior ROTC unit were invited to make a pitch for joining their summer school program prior to my class starting high school. 10 or so sophomores and juniors, all dressed in Air Force uniforms, stood on stage and told us about how ROTC could turn us into leaders. They explained the details of the summer program and how it could turbocharge the path toward becoming an officer in the military. Now, one of the few things I knew about being in the military was that all pilots are officers. I don't think I'd ever left a school assembly more excited in my entire life. For the first time, I could see a clear path that would lead to me being a jet fighter pilot. These kids were pumped to be in uniform, and their proudly displayed ranks and medals also spoke to my desire for structure when everything else in my life was kind of in free fall. I ended up joining that summer school program and met people who were just as enthusiastic about airplanes as I was. I watched what they were doing and started following a similar path. When I found out that ROTC and band were offered at the same time, I'd actually have to pick between them, I didn't even think twice. It wasn't even a choice. I put down the saxophone and I never looked back. I learned that graduating from the United States Air Force Academy was often the fastest path to becoming a jet fighter pilot, and I made my mission to get in. It's a super competitive place to get into though, so I started taking school and extracurricular activities really seriously. I also did all this on my own because my parents had no idea how to guide me. They were unfamiliar with SATs. They had no college system similar to in Ecuador when they were growing up. And also they were just, trying to figure their own lives out. I mean, we were really kind of on our own at this age. So anyway, one of my new friends was taking community college courses while in high school to make himself a more competitive candidate, and I just kind of followed suit. Once I had my driver's license, I began taking math classes at my local community college, and by the time I graduated from high school, I had completed Calculus 4. I also quit the soccer team to lead an after-school drill team, and I also volunteered in my town city council as a youth representative. I did everything I could, basically just kind of copying what other people were doing around me to get into this place. We had to wear our ROTC uniforms every Wednesday during high school, and while many of my classmates hated the ridicule that came with it, I loved it. Looking the part allowed me to see myself as a fighter pilot in training, and once I really started to believe it, I found myself happily doing things that many of my classmates were reluctantly doing just to get their parents off their backs. My friend group slowly transformed as I spent more and more time with people who were just as driven as I was. And looking back, I'm certain that had this positive support group of friends not been in place, my roiling family life and desire for belonging and purpose could easily have caused me to fall in with the wrong crowd and go down a self-destructive path. And I know this to be true because that did eventually end up happening to me just down the road in my mid-30s. Anyway, the environment of the ROTC unit transformed my general interest in airplanes into this crystal clear identity that I just ran wild with during my formative early teenage years. And many, many years later, heading into my 40s, in fact, I came across James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and saw an idea in there that I just knew deep in my bones was true. So quoting him, he says, incentives can build a habit, but identity is what sustains a habit. He also writes that behavior that is incongruent with the self will not last. You may want more money, but if your identity is someone who consumes rather than creates, you'll continue to be pulled towards spending rather than earning. You may want better health, but if you continue to prioritize comfort over accomplishment, you'll be drawn to relaxing rather than training. It's hard to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. You have a new goal and a new plan, but you haven't changed who you are. That just resonates so much with me. Taking on the fighter pilot identity was about as transformative an experience as I've ever had, turning me from someone who was fairly aimless into a driven and disciplined person. I also love that this tactic is always available to anyone who is striving to achieve lofty dreams that appear to be just a million miles away. I did end up successfully applying to the United States Air Force Academy and getting pretty far down the process before learning that my eyesight disqualified me from flying the kind of airplanes that I wanted to fly. It was the first time I had ever had a dream just totally shatter before my eyes. And while I did end up picking myself back up, how I dealt with that is really a story for another video. I had only applied to 2 colleges coming out of high school, the Air Force Academy and UC Berkeley. And UC Berkeley was really more of a backup plan because it was a great school that just happened to be nearby. Luckily, all the hard work I had been doing had effectively amounted to accidentally creating a compounding system that was just beginning to pay really great dividends, and harvesting the work in terms of academic performance and scholastic achievement would eventually open unexpected doors that would again profoundly impact the direction of my life. And so I actually started this channel because I'm excited by the transformative power of compounding systems, and I'm really eager to meet others who feel the same way. I'd love to hear any feedback you might have for this video. Please leave a comment letting me know if I lost you anywhere along the way or if my story resonated with you at all. I'd really like to get better at making these things. Harnessing identity-based change is just one part of setting up a compounding system, and in this playlist, I cover 6 other concepts that will kind of help make success a matter of when and not if. Be sure to check them out. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for visiting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.